Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's BOC product know-how video. The topic we're addressing today is the new version of ADONIS 9.0 at a glance. I'm Mahmoud Al-Khalid, your host today. I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Anthony Ranello, EA and BPM consultant at BOC Group, who I will now hand over to walk you through today's topic.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Once again, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. As Mahmoud mentioned, my name is Anthony. I am a consultant here at the BOC Group. It is my pleasure today to not only introduce you to the newest features contained within our latest release of ADONIS 9.0, but also show them to you as well. Just before we start, I want to give you a brief overview of our agenda today. Firstly, I will introduce the newest features within ADONIS 9.0. After that, I will focus on each of these in a live demo of the tool. And then after that, we will take a closer look at some of the latest releases, key innovations. So like I said, just a quick overview of some of the newest features in the tool, so feature highlights. ADONIS 9.0 now has insights dashboards for both roles and organizational units. So you may already be familiar with insights dashboards as a concept. If not, these dashboards display essential information to your readers about specific objects in a consolidated fashion, essentially all the relevant information in regards to that object, whatever it is. Maybe it's a process, for example. The Insights dashboard is going to consolidate all of that information into one page. So in the latest release of ADONIS, again, the new Insights dashboard for roles and departments, or in this case, organizational units, will give your readers access, again, to the essential information surrounding these two objects, right? So for example, from the Insights dashboard of a role object, readers will be able to see all the tasks that are assigned to a given role. And maybe from the point of view of optimization, the benefit there being that having that overview may, for example, help users find and eliminate redundant tasks that might be assigned to the same role. So again, and that's going to essentially help that individual in that role become more efficient in their daily work. Similarly, in the Insights dashboard for organizational units, one will be able to see all the business process diagrams assigned to that department, thereby creating sort of an easy to access overview of all the departments, processes in your organization, and of course their associated responsibilities, right? So again, you're going to have kind of a one-stop shop in the Insights dashboard with relevance to organizational units. You're going to see all the processes that belong to that specific organizational unit, or as you might call it, a department, all in one place. Moving on to some of the other features that ADONIS 9.0 has to offer. One of the latest analyses that we've created for you is the process cross impact analysis, or process impact analysis, whichever one you prefer. Essentially what it's going to do in any case, it's going to allow users to essentially visualize, or not only visualize rather, all the dependencies of their processes at a glance, but thanks to this new matrix view, they can also easily analyze and evaluate what the effects and impact of changing a process will be on the rest of their process landscape. So we'll see that later on in the tool. Maybe things will become a bit more clear. But with regards to the last highlight that I'd like to point out, what we've done is we've actually configured the read and explore scenario to actually be based on organizational units as well. Given the fact that the read and explore scenario will now be based on organizational units, which a user is actually assigned, what they'll be able to do is have the ability to keep track of all the activities and latest changes happening within their department specifically, among other things, of course. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and actually jump into the tool to show you some of these. But what I'd like to do as well, I'd also like to just highlight very quickly, take an aside and show you some quick tips that might be useful when it actually comes to modeling in ADONIS. So when you first log in, this will essentially be what you see. We'll have our three main scenarios. So of course, that'd be design and document, control and release, right, and read and explore. So we're going to focus on design and document purely today. We'll see read and explore in a second, of course, though. So looking at design and document again, just to go over some of those little tips that make modeling a little bit faster. Of course, when you select design and document, you're going to be brought to the start page. Just to highlight some changes here. Of course, we can go ahead and right away create a business process diagram, that big button right there. We can manage our models down here. We have this new quick access feature, again, not specifically to Adonis 9.0, but it's something that's been recently developed as well that's worth highlighting. Essentially opening that up is going to allow you, for example, to browse anything that was recently opened in your repository, and as well anything that you've actually favorited. And essentially the benefit there being the fact that you can actually browse through content much faster, find what you're looking for easier. Enough of that. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just go ahead and create a business process diagram together. Again, just to kind of highlight some of the, like I said, some of these quick features that I always like to highlight in the webinars. So like I said, we're going to design a process together. Really quickly, let's just add a pool. Let's go ahead and then add 2 swim lanes, right? And what we're going to do is in these lanes, we're going to add then our first object, start event. By the way, another improvement, actually this is specific to Adonis 9.0, you can actually change the size of this particular model explorer here, or rather, sorry, the object palette. Anyways, moving on, so let's just recenter that there. So with the start event, you might already be familiar with the fact that we have our hover modeler pop up. So the hover modeler is our predictive tool that is predicting the most likely object to come next in the sequence, right? Or what should come next. In this case, following BPMN, if we have a start object, we should have our first activity or task. Maybe we add another task, for example. In this case, maybe we'll add a decision here. With this decision, for example, we can then actually drag and drop from that hover modeler down here into this lane, go back, activate the hover modeler again, maybe add 2 more tasks, and finally end off with an end event. And then obviously, if we want to complete this particular circle, or the cycle rather, we can use our magic relation tool to do so. So you saw very quickly that we're able to design a skeleton process. Now, the question is, we obviously want to enrich it. We want to give some more context to this skeleton. Without spending too much time, I just want to show you some of the ways that we can do that, some of the quick ways. Obviously, what we can do here again is if we activate the hover model, you might have noticed this wrench tool. So this wrench tool is what's known as conversion tool, or what we would call maybe soft conversions. Essentially what it's allowing you to do is, again, directly from the hover modeler without having to open up any notebook or anything like that of any object, we can go ahead and select right away, for example, a relevant icon in regards to the BPMN notation that we might already be familiar with. What I mean by that is, for example, maybe this task is a manual task, which means that it does not involve any sort of IT system, right? If we select that, you see that that icon will then appear in the corner up here of that particular task. Maybe going to this one here, for example, this one would then be, for example, a user task. Again, these icons are giving your readers, consumers of this process information, some information regarding the task without having to even open up anything. We're knowing right away that this is a manual task, does not involve an IT system, whereas this one, the user task, still involves me. I'm still doing something, but I might be supported by that IT system. So those are the differences, for example, between those 2 icons. So again, we're just a way to add in that information very quickly, directly from the hover modeler, with the idea, the goal of that being to save you some time in your modeling when you're enriching processes. So again, just kind of in that same vein, sticking with that aside, let's go ahead and open up our quick access feature here, for example, and you can see the benefit of that, plus some of the other features that I'd like to highlight. So like we said this is a user task, again, being one that's still performed by a human, but with the assistance of some sort of application system, right? I have one here that's already been favorited that I want to use. This credit card management system is an application that already exists actually in the Addo Money Bank scenario that you might already have in your instance of Adonis. And again, via drag and drop, you'll see from my Explorer, so my Object Explorer, rather my Quick Access Explorer, I can drag and drop that IT system right onto a task. It highlights in blue, and dragging and dropping, I can actually then immediately denote the fact that this is the IT system relevant for the completion of that task. Again, just helping me kind of enrich a little bit faster. So that's via drag and drop. Of course, that also works for anything else. For example, maybe a document is required for this particular task here. Again, dragging and dropping, I choose the relevant relationship, right? And again, I'm having that icon appear up here. That also works for roles. Just to show you though, just as a bit of a change, if we actually open up, for example, the notebook of a particular task, if that's still something that you want to do, again, just highlighting here some of the different chapters that you find in the notebooks, some of the different places where we can enter certain amounts of metadata. For example, obviously name of the task, its description. By the way, again, sort of an aside to an aside, if I were to put a description here, for example, of this task maybe was, obtain information from the customer. Maybe it's a create new customer process, for example. The first step being obtain information, description. We want to refer to attached documentation, right? We can add that description. And just to close this for 2 seconds, just to be able to, so we'll just save it just to show you. Adding a description will obviously also add its own particular icon here, this info icon. So that'll, again, a handy icon to point out to show that there's a description so that the reader knows if they require some explanation regarding this process or regarding this task, rather, they can open it up and then, of course, consume that information here. Like I said, that was kind of an aside to an aside. Getting back on track, let's say we wanted to, like I said, attach a role to this particular task when it comes to the RACI definition. What I can do is I can take maybe this role here, drag and drop, and you'll see that drag and drop also works into the notebook. So without me having to actually select the relevant chapter, so for example, let me just put that back. Maybe let's just go down to here, for example, risks, right? So of course I'm dragging and dropping a role in this case, but still the notebook, despite the fact that I'm on the risk chapter, will still allow me to create the relevant relationship that this object here, task, has to this particular role, right? So within the tool, obviously we have these relationships that are pre-built. From a role to a task, they can either be responsible for the execution, so the full RACI definition is here, right? Accountable, consulted, informed, so on. And you can actually choose that relationship directly from the notebook without having to go to the specific RACI chapter. So again, putting that in, right? We can see that, for example, there we go. We have that person then underneath that particular task. So just really quickly though, what I'm going to do is I want to show you another tool. So I'm just actually going to remove that relationship. So like I said, just kind of show you some of the tools that might help you in your day-to-day modeling. I've shown you a couple so far. We've gone over soft conversion. We've gone over drag and drop into both the modeling canvas, what we're looking at now, or the notebook. Drag and drop into both of those as possible. Just to highlight another tool that might be useful for you, let's say if we need to, for example, add a new task in here. Maybe we forgot something or we're improving our processes in some way. We can use our create space tool. And from here, if I need to drag and drop in, we can see that Adonis also has, of course, an auto heal function. So again, I'm able to introduce that task in between these two pre-existing ones very easily, right? So again, that's just going to help if you, maybe forget a step, you can always add it in and Adonis will smartly heal essentially the break that's been created. That hopefully just going to save you time. I think it's a worthy feature to always point out. And then lastly, again, sort of along the same vein of time savers and just things that, again, I think are worth showing and displaying in these webinars. If you're not already aware, lanes as well as pools and other objects also have notebooks associated with them. So the lane itself does have an area in which you can enter metadata, essentially within the tool, right? So from here, what that means is obviously drag and drop also would work for a lane. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a new individual to this particular lane. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So again, dragging and dropping onto the lane, we see we can highlight, for example, in this case, a resource. Right away, the name of the lane changes. Again, the benefit here in this particular situation, because I have two swim lanes, obviously I know in this case, whether it's an IT system or an actual person, it should be the same thing, whatever it is, a role or an IT system, completing each and every single one of these tasks. So instead of having to always drag and drop, in this case, the private customer account manager, onto every single one of these tasks to be the responsible person, what I can do is actually just do a quick lane assign. So after I name the resource to this lane, what I'm doing is I'm doing a right click, that option appeared, and I'm able to then make that person responsible for every single task within their relevant swim lane. Again, that's just something that I hope will help just make modeling a little bit faster and a little bit easier in the tool for you. So I think we've gone over that enough now. Now I want to get back on track from my aside to, for example, take a look at, again, some of these new features that are actually within the tool. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my quick access, and I'm going to open up one of our fully populated models from our ADO Money Bank repository, in this case, the Create Credit Application System. So we're seeing this one is obviously a little bit more fully populated. We've named our pool, we've named our two lanes. We have some other icons surrounding our task. For example, in this case, we've seen the risk object, of course. We have some information regarding simulation here, for example, KPI attached, a sub-process object here. Obviously, we're also able to order our tasks. Again, if that's something that you're able to, if you want to do, you would do that from here, for example. You could order your tasks or order your objects rather. So again, just in general, very much fully populated. So what I'm going to do from here is I'm actually going to trigger the Insights dashboard for this particular process. Again, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Insights dashboard, like I mentioned earlier, essentially the idea is with whatever object we're starting with, whatever model, whatever it is in the tool, essentially it's going to pull in relevant information regarding X thing, whatever it is. In this case, it's going to be a process. So we're going to see some relevant information that's actually surrounding this process without having to, as a reader or consumer, go through the entire process to get that information, right? Or open up the notebook, for example. It's all going to be condensed for me all in one page, all in one location, right? So right away, we're getting some information. If I trigger the Insights dashboard for this process, we're getting some information regarding the hierarchy. So we're seeing that this process obviously has some sub-processes in it, for example. And we're seeing how they're related. We're seeing down here, for example, this is just a demo environment. Obviously, not all the relationships have been built, but of course, in your environment, you would then see where this is coming from. Again, helping your readers maybe start to think in maybe a bit more of a process-oriented way, understanding where information is coming from and maybe what information is needed from the sub-processes to complete the given process that you're doing right now, right? So that's the benefit of seeing the process hierarchy. Of course, we're also seeing the involved RACI roles in this particular widget down here. We're seeing the documents associated, the form, right? The file type, if it's an input, output, or a reference document, depending on what it actually is, right? The IT and resource highlights down here, assessment highlights. So if there was scoring or if there's some sort of information regarding any of these bits of information in terms of quality, if this information or IT support, if that information is known, it can be documented to the tool in a relevant chapter within the process, and then of course displayed on the Insights dashboard. And again, very nice visually appealing way using these gauges. Of course, going down again, we also have risk and control information if that's necessary to see KPI information, also if it's related to any initiatives. And of course, the ability to then access any sort of reporting down here directly from the Insights dashboard. So again, the whole point of me showing you that is to show you exactly what an Insights dashboard is supposed to do, right? So now what I'm going to do is actually going to move into the newest Insights dashboard, in this case, focusing on a relevant rule. So in this case, the private customer account manager, we're going to go ahead and trigger the Insights dashboard for this particular role. And again, what we're going to see is all the relevant information regarding or surrounding this object, in this case, this role, specifically the private customer account manager role. We're seeing the organizational unit they belong to, right? We're seeing, for example, down here, any of the tasks that they might actually be performing. In this case, what we're seeing here specifically is actually the process that we were creating earlier, the dummy process that I was creating, right? With some of the tasks that they were involved in. Remember how we assigned to the swim lanes? So this tool is smart enough to know that a change there would then obviously impact and be brought into the Insights dashboard instantly, right? It would happen right away. So we're seeing that information right here. So if someone else made that change, I open up the Insights dashboard, maybe as a different user, I'd be able to see then, for example, oh, great, now we have a new business process that this role is actually responsible for and all the tasks specifically they're doing in that particular process, right? So again, we're seeing that down here as well. And there's not specifically just how they're responsible or what they're doing, if they're accountable, if they need to be informed, for example, and so on. So all that information is here. We're also getting information regarding the classification of our process, right? So some of these processes, again, they might have been classified in some sort of different way. That, again, the ability to do that can be found within the notebook or the properties of a particular process, right? So for example, again, we can input information like predictability, complexity, and so on. That information is here displayed in a tabular view. And then again, down here, actually in, again, more visually appealing pie chart view. So for example, if I want to see, let's say, all my processes that are of a very high complexity, what I can do is I can click on that area of the pie chart and have those specifically highlighted here. Again, maybe I can then, the next step would be to actually trigger some views or analyses specifically on these ones in the context of this role, right? So again, just summarizing information, if necessary, of course, if I wanted to, if maybe some of this information was very cluttered, of course, you can always remove information from any of these pie charts to, again, maybe just focus on what you're wanting to look at, right? And then finally down here, that information regards the scoring, again, presented in another way with the ability to, again, hide information as necessary. And of course, from down here, the ability to trigger some actual views. Okay. So that was the Insights dashboard for roles. Now what I'm going to do is move into the one for organizational units, right? So again, same thing. We're seeing as well how I can move from the different Insights dashboards very easily. I started off with my process, went to my role, and then from my role, I opened up the Insights dashboard for this particular organizational unit, in this case, the private customer / branches, right? It's a department, as it says right here. There's 2 users that are actually assigned to it. We're seeing those users here. We're seeing their involved business processes, right? We're seeing information regarding, for example, assigned business processes, the key facts surrounding it, who our process owner is, what the state is, documents that are associated to both of these processes in this department, the risks, IT systems, and so on. Again, classification overview with the same idea with regards to the pie charts, clicking on those. For example, here, if I want to know which ones are key, again, I can then do the analysis, in this case, from the perspective of the department rather than from the perspective of the role if I needed to. And again, that information being displayed as a radar chart, for example, and some initiatives information down here as well. So related initiatives maybe to this particular department they might be involved in. Right. So those are the 2 new dashboards. Hopefully you'll find those useful. What I'm going to do now is move into describing the new matrix that we've created. So opening up my model here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one that already actually has been created and sort of dissect it and go through that with you, kind of explain the benefits of creating such a view. Right. There we go. Okay. So this is the new process cross impact analysis. Essentially here, what we're looking at is how a change in one process affects all the other ones, right? And that change has been given an associated strength, right? So if I just show you the legend really quickly, again, we're seeing here, for example, the level of impact can be scored essentially from 0 to 3. How do we do that? How do we get a view like this? So a view like this can be triggered, for example, from your process landscape map, for example, if you have one, again, to kind of score and get an impact and get an idea of all your processes and how they interact with each other, right? So let's take a look at an example here, this one, manage strategy. So this is a process in our repository that has an associated diagram, for example. And what we've done here is if we click on it in the notebook, if we open it up, again, we're seeing that this one is actually locked for editing because obviously it's been released. I don't want to go too much into that, but of course that's where the control and release scenario would come into play. But in general, if we go to the dependencies chapter, we can see here that we have the impacted processes listed here. The first one being advise customer. So we know that this process impacts somehow this other process, advise customer, from maybe some other area of our scenario, right? I mean, for example, and in this case, if you're curious what MP and CP stand for, MP would be a management process, and CP would be some sort of core process, right? So that's the distinction here. So we've divided all our processes essentially in terms of if they're management, core, or a support process with S. And then what we've done is in this new chapter of this process object notebook in the dependencies chapter, we've then listed all the impacted processes that would be impacted rather by a change in this manage strategy process, right? So we've listed that, we know that information. And then what we can do is we can obviously then give a little bit more flavor to that particular change. We can essentially color code it, heat map it, and get an idea of the impactfulness of a given change on another process, right? So in order to do that, obviously the information would then need to be documented on the level of the relationship. So I've already mentioned that tasks, roles, any object really in Adonis has, or should have rather, an associated notebook in which you can then input relevant metadata. We saw that with the lane, we saw that with the task, like I said. So not only that though, some relationships, so literally the connection between two different objects, in this case between a process and another process, that relationship, that bond, also has a notebook associated to it in which you can actually enter certain amounts of metadata. So in this case, clicking here, for example, we can see that the level of impact has actually been, again, this has been obviously locked for editing as it's been released, but we can see that it has been documented in the past as having a level of impact of 3, a strength of 3, right? If we don't know what that means, of course, we can always trigger this info button here to see, for example, how we can define that level of impact. So the question here is essentially, if one business process X is changed, how much does the business process Y change as a result, right? So in this case, because it's a strength 3, we're saying that a small change in X will lead to that large change in Y, right? So that's why we've denoted that as level 3. And then if we use our window browser tool here, just to go back to that matrix, we can see that that's been listed here as 3, okay? So again, looking at from the other point of view, again, going to dependencies, we can see where it's actually impacted, right? So it's impacted by this one here. And again, going to that relationship, you'll see that we can still see from the other perspective that it is still listed as 3, right? So that's the benefit of having that information documented at the level of the relationship, right? So just a couple more things on this matrix. Again, obviously in this case, we're saying that a small change here is going to have a large change here, right? And what's also nice is, of course, that this matrix is showing you that for every process and how they're interconnected with each other, right? And that's then being tracked on the relevant axes. So right here in the active sum, if we're looking at that, if we focus on that, essentially what that's going to illustrate to you is how impactful a given process is, assuming it's changed, right? So the higher the number, it's going to reflect its impactfulness. Whereas the passive sum, right, looking down this way, is essentially giving you an idea of how impacted a given process actually is, right? So again, the higher the number would let you know how sensitive this particular process is to a given change. And again, that information will then maybe help you, for example, to decisions maybe with a bit more clarity, understanding that, if we just want to go ahead and completely change our managed strategy process, that is going to then affect our advised customer process somehow, right? So again, this triggering a view like this is just going to help you make those types of decisions and get just a little bit more clarity in regards to, if you want to make a change, maybe how do we prioritize that change, for example, and just in general, how can we even then avoid certain problems that might come as a result of that particular change. That would be the whole benefit of this particular matrix. And of course, as always, it can be exported as an Excel, PDF, or as an image to be able to actually be shared out with the tool. Right. So like I said, lastly, so that's the design and document scenario, all the changes that have been in there. Let's just go to the read and explore scenario. Like I mentioned at the beginning, what we've done here is you're able to, if you have the admin toolkit component of Adonis, you can actually configure now the read and explore scenario. It can be configured with reference to the organizational unit that a particular user might actually be in. So for example, what we're seeing here is we're still logged in as our power user Ado being the main designer in the tools, that's the user role, but in reality, in the organization, obviously this individual has some sort of role, whatever it is, and normally that information would be displayed here. At least in older versions of Adonis, that was the only way. You'd only be able to see it from the perspective of your role. But now you can also see it from the perspective of your organizational unit. So in this case, this user Ado, whatever role he has in the company, he's part of the business customers department, management board, and so on, right? So of course, in this case, typically one user would probably only be associated with one department. In the demo scenario, we've kind of enriched it just a little bit further. But of course, it would theoretically still be possible to do that should a particular person be involved in different departments, right? That would be listed up here. So the user, once they log into the read and explore scenario, they would be able to see, for example, the org units to which they are assigned. They would also be able to keep track of any news or any changes that have actually occurred within the tool, for example, right? So since last week, we can see anything that's changed, in this case, not much. They can see some of the tasks that have been assigned to them or that they need to complete, for example, here. Under my processes, for example, just seeing here, these are the processes in which they are involved. So my processes, if I'm logging as ADO, what I'm seeing here are my processes. And this involvement is determined by either them being listed as the process owner, manager, methodical reviewer, again, these being the roles in Adonis, like powers did this particular user have. In this case, ADO is process analyst and a designer, right? But the main change here is also we're seeing the processes in terms of the assignment to the organizational unit, right? Which in turn are assigned to one or several processes in the relevant chapter being scope. So in particular process objects notebook, there is a chapter known as scope. And then this is where you can actually assign the organizational unit, creating that relationship between the two in this particular read and explore scenario here. So we're seeing not only the process they're involved in as any of these, process owner, process manager, methodical reviewer, but as well, and by my assignment to a particular organizational unit as well, right? So that's really the main thing. We're also seeing the processes that are connected to that particular organizational unit to which I am also assigned. From there as well, so hopefully that was clear. But again, just to kind of summarize again, obviously we have the ability to access our favorites, normal, company maps would work the same way, and the documents that are in the processes here. And again, I think the main thing with this new feature is if your roles are not yet defined, or you just simply want kind of this higher level departmental view, the possibility to configure the read and explore scenario like this through a departmental lens will just help you focus your efforts and stay on top of things in maybe a bit of a more high level way. All right, so hopefully that was clear. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and jump back to the slides just to kind of summarize again everything that we've seen. So like I said, just really trying to summarize the information. Again, with the insights dashboard for roles, obviously the ability to visualize process information in an efficient way is kind of one of the main benefits. We can see, for example, information about the organizational units to which the role belongs, the objects for which the role is responsible for, and for example, among other things, all the tasks assigned to the role and their business process diagram, all of that being accessible from that particular dashboard. Same thing for organizational units. We have information about the roles assigned to the organizational units, all the business process diagrams associated to that unit, and even some information regarding the relevant risk and controls and how to mitigate them as well, being visualized in reference to the given business process associated with this particular organizational unit. With the process cross-impact analysis or impact analysis, whatever you want to call it, again, the whole point main here, if I can summarize, is don't assume know the effects of your processes, right? So again, with this ability, you can analyze the effects of process changes on your entire process landscape. Again, maybe to help you make specific decisions in regards to should we do a change? If not, how can we mitigate any change, any negative consequences associated with the change, and so on. And of course, that information can be documented in terms of a strength from 0 to 3, and that being then given a particular number, or rather color, associated with the heat map, again, helping you to kind of hone in on the most impactful processes as well, right? That would be the benefit there. And of course, read and explore based on organizational units. Again, I think I kind of covered that pretty well. I mean, just to say, really, it gives you an idea of all your department's activities at a glance. It can be based on roles or organizational units. Roles would be the one that we'd be probably most familiar with, given that it's obviously a new feature of ADONIS 9.0. Obviously, we still have access to our familiar news and tasks widgets. And again, things like company maps and processes, again, all in one page that's easily accessible for a given reader. Okay, so finally, we're moving on to kind of the last sort of section of the webinar in terms of just overviewing some other new features that I didn't maybe not necessarily get a chance to highlight, but are still worth mentioning to you. So regarding the 64-bit architecture, again, this is something that's new with ADONIS 9.0, essentially going to make ADONIS way more equipped to accommodate any of your needs and help accompany organizations' transformation and process journeys with ease. Essentially, what it's going to do in a nutshell is you're going to get to benefit from even more speed, better performance, and a substantially larger memory capacity. There's been some improvements to process simulation, for example, specifically with regards to the path analysis will now automatically sort the processes paths by probability, helping you easily get to the most plausible outcomes. Some other ones, for example, we've created some advancements in capacity to, like I said, what if analyses and empath analyses, essentially helping you translate your process data into business value in a more efficient, easier way. In terms of usability, I think we've already covered some of the main features in terms of this, like, for example, hover modeling, soft conversions, and so on. These are things that are obviously going to be very helpful to you, but specifically the ones unique to ADONIS 9.0. I did mention that you can flexibly adjust the modeling bar, the ability to activate smart filters. So for example, in the notebook, we saw how there was many chapters open. So a racy chapter, for example, is one of them. Again, using these smart filters, you can actually then sort of declutter that space, that notebook space, to be able to, again, just focus on what you're actually looking for rather than, again, having to browse through different chapters to find what you need. You can declutter that right away, shrink it down, show only a certain amount of chapters, again, just to try to bring that value forward a little bit faster. In terms of the tabular view, which is, again, not something we actually saw today, but something you might be familiar with, of course, we've been looking primarily at our graphical view, but of course, our models also exist in the form of a table. And essentially, in a nutshell there, in terms of usability, copy and pasting has gotten the ability to actually copy and paste information has actually been improved with reference to that. And lastly, the thing that I want to highlight as well with respect to our integration with our tool ADOIT, that would be our EA suite, the management office integration, or MOI, between those tools essentially allows for the seamless interaction between ADONIS and ADOIT. And with the latest extension, that interaction is even faster and, again, much easier to actually trigger. We can exchange data between the tools, and essentially the whole point of that integration in general is to keep your business and IT worlds in harmony and, yeah, be able to sync information between them, again, faster, more efficiently. A lot of improvements with regards to that in this latest release. So in closing, I want to thank you very much for your attention. I will now hand you back to Mahmoud, who will finish off today's presentation.
Thank you, Anthony. That was a very interesting presentation on Adonis's new features at a glance. If you are interested in starting to make those changes today with BOC Group, well, we offer more than just the software. We pride ourselves in providing a comprehensive BOC Group experience that has ensured our customers' success for 25 years now. The BOC Group experience is composed of 3 key elements. Firstly, our software. As part of the BOC Management Suite, we offer 2 main flagship products, the well-known ADONIS for business process management, analysis, and optimization. And because we think that BPM should be available and accessible to everyone, we offer ADONIS Community Edition, providing you with the best-in-class professional BPM available in the cloud, free of charge. Its deployment is immediate and easy, and most importantly, gives you access to your valuable work and data as you go. Our second flagship product, ADOIT, focuses on IT management and enterprise architecture, repeatedly acclaimed with international customers and renowned analysts that have become increasingly aware of us. BOC Group also offers an additional module, GRC, for governance, risk, and compliance, allowing you to meet risks and controls sustainably and increase the efficiency, effectiveness, and success of your company. I'd also like to introduce the new BOC Group Marketplace, where you're able to access an ever-evolving portfolio of modules and services. The BOC Marketplace is your ideal companion to find and integrate with apps that perfectly complement and extend your ADONIS and ADOIT, helping create more value for you and for your organization. Finding the right tools you need to grow has never been easier. Our BOC Group Knowledge Hub is packed with an extensive collection of videos, workshops, and other online resources. Our Knowledge Hub will become your new favorite educational platform. It will be giving you first-hand access to our business insights, practical know-how and expertise on a large selection of topics revolving around BPM and EA and GRC. We love to share our 25 years of knowledge with our customers. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter to stay up to date with BOC events and news and latest releases. All this makes up the unique BOC Group experience. All our products are developed entirely in-house at BOC Group, no outsourcing, guaranteeing their quality. Benefit now from over 25 years of experience. Get in touch with us to find out more. Thank you once again on behalf of the both of us. Goodbye and have a good day.